None of that has worked. The whole backdoor approach just, I don't know, it just falls apart. And there's too much there for this to be happening, and yet they succeed in limiting the subject, I guess would be a way to put it.
Yes, they limit the subject, and I think to some degree we also have, we carry the burden of some of that responsibility because our attention spans are so short. When we come to general elections, there's always a consensus, a laughter that the attention span of the electorate is no more than 20 minutes if you're lucky. And I think that says something about ourselves, too. If we have become so... I can't think of the proper word, but if we become so enthralled with everything else, we carry actually more interest for tabloids or what the Hollywood crowd is doing or who's wearing what than we do concerning information that is...
Well, not so much the crowd you're talking to right now, to be sure. But yes, generally in society, certainly you're right.
And we're talking about we need to have mass support in order to get something to change, and so... we have to be able to appeal to the interests of the masses, and that's a very slow process.
Talk to me about Adamski.
Well, we met George Adamski in 1963. Our family was in downtown Washington, and we witnessed one of these saucer-shaped crafts hovering about 1,200 feet. It was reported in the Washington Daily News. There was a reporter also there at the same time. I have the article. And due to this sighting of this saucer-shaped craft, as you see on some of the pictures on the website, particularly that frame of one of the motion picture footage. Mm-hmm. My father went to the Library of Congress, saw Adamski's book, saw the same picture, contacted him, and George was coming out to lecture to the Air Force Reserves. We met him, we became very close friends, and for the last 2 years of his life on the East Coast, we helped to arrange international press conferences and television and radio shows, and we were also witness and to some of the events that took around him as well. After George passed away, we inherited the mantleship of the creation of the George Adamski Foundation, along with other co-workers, and we have carried that forth since that time.
That's quite a lot.
Yeah, I can truly say that, to use no other words, I've been blessed to be involved this for 40 of my 47 years. I mean, it's not just theory to me. I've seen it. I've seen it as a child. I've seen it as a professional and adult. I've seen photographs. My father took photographs, so this is not theory for me.
All right. We appear to be, according to many people, myself being one of them, approaching some sort of ecological trigger point, some sort of, I don't know, we all see the weather changing, Glenn. We see the poles shrinking. We see a lot of things going on Earth that sort of add up to real trouble rather immediately ahead for us with the weather and a lot of other things. Does any of what you've looked at coincide with any of what's happening here in any way? Can you connect the two?
Yes. The contacts that came to George during the 1950s were involved with several different levels of information. One of them was the result of our atomic testing, mm-hmm. and the fact that it was creating an immense disturbance and imbalance, ringing. The planet literally rings like a bell, as we recently discovered with the tsunami in Southeast Asia.
Well, in fact, it does. That's correct.
And it also disturbs the magnetic rings of the planet itself, and it causes disturbances out in space. So that was a concern. Also, the planet is going through a geological shift, and this is science that we even understand. There are certain cycles. One of them is approximately a 26,000-year cycle, in which we have shifting polarity, we have teutonic increased activity, and whatnot. And the education of those particular cycles of our planet was also some of the information that was given to George, and he talked quite extensively to scientists, to government officials, and to the general public as well. And so we're going through a planetary change, and also we are exciting some of that through our little bit of wanton disregard.
Is there any way to compare the number of sightings prior to Roswell with the number of sightings after Roswell? Or how about this? The number of sightings prior to the detonation of the first atomic bomb versus the number of sightings since?
from historical records that go back as far, let's say, to the 1700s,
Sure.
they would say that there is a continuous amount in a much smaller scale than after we started atomic testing. Then, as we mentioned before, we were looking at as much as 700 a day in the United States alone. And so this increased activity, they came to make us aware of certain things that we need to know. And we don't have to look at everything in the terms of cataclysm and Armageddon and things like this. These are natural cycles. And if we work with these cycles and understand them, then it doesn't become so traumatic.
Well, there were a couple of instances, very, very well documented, Glenn, when UFOs hovered above our missile silos and disabled missiles, nuclear missiles. And then there are reports also in the Soviet Union of similar occurrences, even scarier, in which an actual countdown to launch began and couldn't be stopped. They ripped apart control boards like crazy over there, never did find out why it happened, but put straight, they scared the hell out of both sides.
Yeah, well, we certainly need a little bit of scaring every so often, at least not in the sense of terror is concerned, but we need a little wake-up call every so often because we're playing with forces and we're sitting on the potential to not only destroy all living things on the planet, but the planet itself. I mean, we are like petulant children playing with guns that are way too big.
So you think it was that? You think it was a warning?
I believe that there are, from reports that I've read as well, there have been reports of these crafts hovering over military facilities, over nuclear power plants, over Rocky Mountain area as well, in which we produce a lot of the plutonium and things like that, and over NORAD command and what have you. And so we have the very well documented incidents in the United Kingdom and Britain as well. So I think that as a wise precaution, of course, we talk about why observe us. I think that's a primary reason right there, to keep an eye on exactly what we would do to ourselves and everybody else for the sheer sake of playing who's right and who's wrong.
Well, you have to wonder how an alien race would react to the knowledge that we have these weapons and then are beginning to test, enlarge them, and now, of course, what we can do makes Hiroshima look like a little firecracker going off.
Right.
And so you have to wonder, is it your view that if something awful started, they would stop it?
I have heard that they have intervened on 3 circumstances in the last 45 years.
Really? Care to name them?
Well, I think that anybody who does a little research would find that for themselves there. But there were 3 circumstances in which we were on the brink, and that was de-escalated because of some extracurricular help.
That's pretty intriguing. Can you actually back that up, or are you just repeating stories, or what?
I can only, on some of that, I can relate that information directly from Mr. Adamski, who was involved in one of those circumstances.
No kidding.
That's correct.
All right. What I'd like to do when we get back, if we could, is to allow the audience to ask you questions. And I imagine you're going to get both the people who think that there's some possibility that what you say is correct with regard to bases on the moon and all the rest of what we've discussed and talked about, Earth-based telescopes. Now, I understand that our government could conceivably control, for example, what man saw while he was on the moon. Our government could conceivably certainly control what our probes and satellites have shown, because that's their territory. But, there's a lot of telescopes, Earth-based telescopes at universities and learning centers and observatories around the world. And what I'm asking you is, some of them are very powerful. Are they powerful